Hello and welcome back to Hollowponds Solo Sagas. So it's time for another one of our how-to masterclass, bit of advice, my thoughts on solo role-playing and creativity. What I thought I'd discuss with you today is my thoughts on the differences between campaigns and one-offs. So I've got some notes, so I'll keep looking down and referring to my notes, as I like to have notes for these ones. I make everything else up on the fly, but these I like to have structure. So what we'll go through in this video is we will go through the differences between campaign play and one-offs, how you might choose to approach them depending on the type of games you like playing and the play style you like, and we might then discuss some tips for managing those and for keeping the story going and keeping you engaged within those. So before we get into that, thank you so much if you're a subscriber and you have returned to these videos. If you are not yet a subscriber and you have seen me because of the how-to guides and the on solo role-playing, I don't just exhibit though at all of my videos. I will give you my thoughts on creativity and my thoughts on different techniques for doing solo role-playing, but mainly the main content I put out is actual plays of solo role-playing, or me telling stories using the games as frameworks, i.e. examples. I would like to say thank you so much to the Adventurers Guild, who have been supporting me for quite a while, some of them, almost a year coming up to, for one of the members. And at that point, I will say, so I've my youngest daughter has started doing screen printing. She's a creative and artist and wants to go into screen printing. And I asked her if she would screen print some special t-shirts for those people who have been members for a year. And so if you're a membership and your membership is a year, at this point I'm able to, because I'm here, not in the Netherlands, source some t-shirts and I will get you some special 1 year commemorative t-shirts. But on to the how-to videos. So, campaign play or one-offs. Why would you choose to have campaign play or one-offs? So the major difference is, of course, one-off is you are just exploring an aspect of a story or an aspect of a character. It could be that you are doing a cinematic play type story, which you can do with Alien. You could have a certain thing, a battle or something, or a certain game that you want to play. Now, as a solo player, it's highly unlikely your one-off will be one session. So we have done some one-offs that become one session. So particularly with narrative games or story games, it's easier to do a one-off. Campfire Story, Tin Star, you can do one-offs within that confine of a game, or Caught in the Rain, one-off. But more likely your one-off will stretch to a few sessions, as there are smaller time frames you possibly do as a solo role player. It's a bit more tiring, basically. It's creatively and mentally more draining. One of the things that we possibly will do that is potentially creative, more draining, which then goes on to our campaign play. So campaign play is where it's more traditional. There is no end. So you don't have one specific story you want to do. You are crawling a map, or you have generated a character and you're going to go pillage some dungeons, or you are doing an ongoing story of investigations within an investigative framework, or you are playing Cyberpunk and you're going to do a series of gigs. There is no end. It's a campaign. You can then explore things and do a little bit more within that. So you can explore the character arcs, you can explore more complex stories, you can have reoccurring characters within that. So campaign play gives you that longer tail where you don't really know. You have to decide when to end with a campaign. The short one-off, the end is clearly defined. So which one will suit you better? So if you want to explore you want to explore a world, you want to explore the world of Cyberpunk Red 2045, campaign play. You want to explore different characters and how they're going to interact. Some may die, some Twilight 2000. Twilight 2000 is way more a terminal than I have had it. Although we have had characters have injuries, such as Jane, you can come characters in and out, but there's a nice big world in Twilight 2000 you can explore. You can have a long-term goal of going somewhere. You don't need to have a short-term goal, but with that, you have consistency. If you can be consistent about playing through, then you will be able to remember what happened last time and be able to continue your story much easier in a campaign play. If you are flighty and you've got loads of different systems you want to play, or you only have a short thing you want to experiment, how does the combat work in this system? How does magic work in this system? How do I do hacking in this system? Then a one-off is probably better suited for you. If you have a specific story you want to tell, then probably a one-off is better suited to you, because it's easier to maintain that story focus and it's easier to maintain that character focus. You can then, which we'll discuss later on, you can extend that one-off into a campaign, but having that eternal, you don't know what to do next, really is a drain on your creativity, and a campaign may just be too big. Which then brings us into, how do you manage the challenges of the both of campaign play and one-off? How do you manage the differing challenges between those two things? So campaign play, it's important where, with the last one of these, where we're discussing the balance between combat and story, the balance between combat and story becomes slightly more important in a campaign, because if you are overloading yourself in combats, complex combats, which are basically end up being tabletop skirmishes, a campaign can become very draining on time, because each one of your sessions can evolve into, particularly with some of the systems and some of the rule systems, can evolve into 2 or 3 hours worth of skirmish game with very little actual story and actual campaign, which is cool. If that's what you want, that is cool and super and great, but it's probably not the type of campaign that you're aiming for, I would suppose, if you're playing a tabletop role-playing game. So you need to be aware of balancing within a campaign story, combat and pacing, and having hits or beats like are used within the Cyberpunk system, using story beats. And you can use the story beat system because it is, you can look it up, it's a writing technique for pacing of a story, and pacing is what you need to think about more with a campaign. With a one-off is more punchy. With a one-off, you don't mind delivering the main power load of your story quite early. You can follow the more traditional, the Netflix approach. Start with action. You can start in the middle of a combat, and then you can pace through your short one-off story, because you can pitch in hard into all the combat, hard into the one-off nature. That you don't need to work out all the back history of all your characters. You don't need to have a reoccurring villain. You can have a villain and then do away with the villain. It's fine. You're not wasting a potential. With a campaign, if you kill your villain too soon, you're wasting the potential. Within the Cyberpunk game, Caius can come back because Caius got away. Within the one-off, we don't care. We don't really want them to get away. We want to beat them because it's just the one-off experience. One-offs is probably easier if you want to play a module, a pre-written adventure, play it as a one-off. Something like a treasure hunt works well as a one-off, whereas with a campaign, you want that looped story, an end that may not be easy to reach, always reaching a new goal to go to a new hop. It's a slightly different pitch between the two when you're managing the actual process of the story and the pacing of the story. And that comes down to what you want to do and what you like to do. If you like writing those long tail stories with lots of looping back, campaign will suit you really well. If you like short stories and you in your head you come up with these short punchy stories, then it's fine to play more one-offs. It's your creativity, it's your game, it's your time, whichever way is the best for you. Now, the one thing I would advise with the campaign when it comes to that pacing, and some advice on keeping stories moving, is try not, and within my campaigns you'll see, I try not to get too bogged down by side quests. It's very easy to keep meeting this NPC and generate this side quest and generate that side quest. It will happen in computer games, like RPG computer games, all the time. You'll have a quest log that's 2 or 3 pages with all these tiny little quests you have to do. When you're solo role playing, even in a campaign, you want to keep those just like the Walking Dead game suggests, like with 6 rumors at one time, don't have more. Even 6 is a lot. If you go through the Walking Dead, If you look at The Walking Dead Season 1, or if you've got access to the early doors and you can see Season 2, which is coming to the conclusion for the members, you can see that some of those rumours we never get to. I personally would advise, if you want to generate side quests, keep it to about 3 or 4 side quests at most. You don't want to have a lot more than that go. You can have your main storyline and a few little side things going on, little side gigs, but don't clutter it down with too much at the same time. It will overload you cognitively, and unless you thrive in that kind of environment, which is cool, then you aren't going to progress forwards, and it's going to become, you're not going to want to play because it's a drain, it's an admin drain, and you don't want that. Now for one-offs, I would say you want to be much tighter with time. So you want no side quests whatsoever when you come to a one-off. You want to focus on the main story. If we look at the Alien cinematic that we did, which was Chariot of the Gods, there was only that one story path that we were chasing the whole time. There was no, even though we had those separate little things, we as a solo player, we used those as flavour, but we did not deviate from our solo path because we didn't want to be bogged down. We wanted a single story path that progresses forwards. It's where even more, like I said previously, you can do you wake up in the middle of a burning building. You're in the middle of a battle and you start up straight away with the battle. You're just staying focused on the action. So you can have more battles within a one-off. You can focus on the story. It all depends what you're doing. So a lot of our Call of Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu not being a combat focused game anyway, we can have no combats whatsoever to occur. Maybe a short scuffle as two people punch each other, and that's about the extent of it. But we are trying to keep that story moving and keep that story tight and keep chasing down to the known conclusion. Now, nothing stops you if you start playing a one-off, which I hinted at the beginning of this. If you start playing a one-off and you really like those characters, to turn it into a campaign. It's very unlikely you will have a campaign that you will then turn into a one-off, unless you don't like it and you get bored with it and you fade off, which is a shame because it means you never get to finish the story. But with the one-offs, if you like those characters and like things, you can chain your one-offs, chain away along, and then you've ended up having a campaign. If you're not too sure about the amount of commitment you can put in, play a one-off. If the surviving characters survive, move them on if you like them. Otherwise, switch to a different system, switch to a different thing, do another one-off. But it's a long-running thing. Even when you have tabletop games with a group, we all would have probably experienced where we'll go, oh, we'll just do a one-off, and then everyone likes the game, everyone likes the system, everyone likes the story, and it ends up being a long-running thing. Nothing precludes some tests with the system, which then becomes a campaign. So to summarise, what we're basically saying is if you have a long-running story where you're mainly focusing on the world and the interactions between the characters within that world and their backstories, campaign play is more along your lines. If you're mainly thinking along a story that you want to tell, which is more episodic in nature, then you want that longer one-off. Or if you just have a short thing, a scene or something, then you're thinking more of a one-off. Any of the smaller ones can then end up being something bigger. It's highly unlikely the big ones come down. If you do choose to do one of the bigger ones, you want to be very conscious of pacing of your story, not overloading yourself with things to distract yourself, character backgrounds, side quests, other things that branch out and become very complicated to handle. And you want to keep your pacing and your encounters and your stuff going, not getting overloaded with massive combats. Massive? If you do have massive combats, try extrapolating some of those combats. Do some dice rolls or some skill rolls and just say what happens in the end and narrate it. Don't worry about so much about the actual tabletop skirmishing. And I think that's it. Let us know in the comments whether you prefer running long campaigns or one-offs. That then puts comments in the comments, you see, and then the algorithm likes that. If you are enjoying this, do consider being a subscriber if you're not a subscriber. If you're a subscriber, thank you very much for subscribing. And of course, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Thank you so much to the Adventurers Guild for your support. Hopefully this helps in that whole thoughts or my thoughts around campaigns and short ones. Most of my short one-offs are around the 4 or 5 sessions, sometimes a bit less. I will have the mid-tier sort of almost stretched out campaigns, which are around 10, and then most of my even longer campaigns, I will then do 20-ish sessions, so as I don't get bored and I don't become creatively drained, and then I'll come back and do a series 2 or a series 3. And those are my thoughts on campaigns and one-offs. Thank you so much for your time. Hope this can help. Let's hear your thoughts, and I'll see you next time for an actual play or more of these. See ya.